This salmon fillet didn't come from the sea. It was grown in a lab to look just like the real thing.
There are a lot of questions that people have. Number one question is, what does it taste like?
Salmon is one of the most popular fish in the US, and it usually comes from massive farms like this, which can cause all kinds of environmental problems. Growing it from cells might one day offer an alternative.
It's going to be a long, very hard journey to get there.
Foods made this way aren't yet approved for sale in the US or anywhere in the world except Singapore. And even if they were, are consumers likely to see them on a menu anytime soon? We went to San Francisco to try and find out. For thousands of years, salmon were abundant in what's now North America. But in 1866, European settlers in the Pacific Northwest started preserving salmon by canning it. It was the start of a massive commercial fishing operation. Soon, fisheries were catching millions of pounds of salmon every year. For a while, the supply of salmon seemed limitless, but it wasn't. In fact, wild salmon populations were already declining by the late 1800s. And less than a century later, some were at risk of disappearing forever.
Is there a possibility of salmon becoming extinct at this rate?
Oh, there's no question about it.
The idea of farming salmon came about in the late 60s. By the early 2000s, around 2/3 of the salmon Americans were eating was grown on farms. But that industry comes with its own problems. Farmed salmon are prone to parasite infestations, which can spread to wild populations. And salmon feed is made partially from other fish. Roughly 12% of all fish caught every year are turned into feed for fish farms. And that has a huge impact on global fish populations, especially in places like Peru and Senegal.
We just need another source of fish, and that's what we're here to provide. All right.
This is Arya Elfenbein and Justin Kolbeck. They co-founded WildType back in 2016.
Last one.
Their goal was to figure out how to grow a piece of salmon from cells.
I started to think about a lot of my background in stem cell biology and wondered, do we need animals to have meat? One last piece. It's yours.
WildType isn't yet letting cameras inside the lab where it grows the salmon, because the process is still in development. Instead, Arya explained how it all works.
So the first step for us was to basically isolate the cells.
WildType got the cells from coho and chinook salmon. The cells go into a steel tank, like the kind you'd see in a brewery, with nutrients like sugars and amino acids. The tanks have the right temperature, pH, and oxygen level for the cells to grow and replicate the same way they would inside a fish. But what comes out afterward still looks nothing like a piece of salmon. That's where something they call scaffolds come in.
So if the product is going to be a block of salmon, we'll create scaffolds that are those same dimensions. And then the cells will grow into those dimensions.
They also help the cells mimic the textures of muscle and fat. The cells attach to the scaffolds and grow into a shape similar to the salmon fillet you would buy at a store.
And that, over time, becomes the final product.
The growing process takes 4 to 6 weeks. Compare that to the roughly 3 years it takes to raise farmed salmon. If it's still hard to wrap your head around how this is possible, you're not alone. Arya and Justin introduced us to Adam Tortosa, a restaurant owner and chef. He works with WildType to test how lab-grown salmon looks, tastes, and feels in real dishes.
It's just crazy that they're growing salmon meat, to be honest.
He says it finally looks and feels pretty close to the real thing.
I think if you blindfolded me and had me cut, I couldn't tell the difference. This one I would dip in the soy sauce.
But it wasn't always this way.
They walked into the restaurant and brought prototype 1. It was kind of wet salmon jerky, maybe.
Now, he says even the taste is close.
It has the same mouthfeel, same fattiness.
Of course, we had to try it for ourselves. The flavor was mild, but it really did have a texture that was close to salmon.
I would be happy to serve it to guests right now.
Adam's restaurant is the type of place where Wildtype hopes to see its salmon one day.
When you go to the sushi bar, you're sort of in an exploratory mindset. The idea was, if we're going to introduce a new way to make this product, why not introduce it in a place where people are already kind of seeking out a new experience?
The company decided to focus on raw salmon for its initial product launch.
When we decided this was the way we wanted to go, we had a lot of people on the team thinking like, couldn't we start with something a little easier? Because it was very audacious. Somehow when I make cut rolls, they look not as good as this. I can never get it quite right. Like, you can taste oceanic notes, not the sort of like funky fish flavor. These fancy dishes are hard to eat from. Right. This is just one starting point for the wide variety of different flavors that this product is capable of.
But there are still two big problems. The first is that it isn't even legal to sell cell-cultured foods in the US. That's because the FDA is still figuring out how to regulate foods that are made like this.
And that process just takes time, right? To share how the technology works and just get the people who oversee the safety and security of our food system very comfortable with our inputs, our processes.
But it's unclear when the FDA will make a decision.
We hope it'll be soon.
The second challenge is cost.
A couple pieces of nigiri these days would probably cost 40 or 50 bucks, ballpark.
That's the production cost, which means if they started selling it right now, the cost for consumers would be even higher.
Nobody's ever created and scaled a company like this before, and we're trying as hard as we can to move that along, but it is really hard.
Wildtype says as they scale up, the costs will come down.
But building large, sterile facilities is expensive. And some journalists who have covered the industry, like Joe Fassler, say we shouldn't expect labs to create competitively priced products anytime soon.
I think the more realistic voices I talk to in this space understand that it may be decades before these products are anything more than a novelty for the wealthy.
It's a challenge that doesn't seem to have scared investors away. Wildtype recently raised $100 million with reported investments from some big names like Leonardo DiCaprio and Jeff Bezos. Even though a survey of US consumers showed that only 19% were eager to try cell-cultured foods.
This is New Zealand farm salmon. It's what we use in the restaurant in San Francisco. This is the wild type salmon.
I think lab-grown meat at the moment is incredibly divisive. There are some things that really recommend it, and there are some things that, are potentially drawbacks, and there's also just a lot that we don't know.
Arya and Justin say they don't expect lab-grown salmon to become the only option.
Our goal is to provide a new source of fish to take the pressure off our oceans.
Lab-grown salmon is still a long way from that goal.
But I think at the end of that road lies very nutritious, very accessible foods that are built on 21st century values.